It was a Friday night in a small-town bar, the kind of place where the lights were dim, the jukebox played old country songs, and tired locals came to shake off the weight of the week. Laughter mixed with the clinking of glasses, conversations overlapped, and the air smelled of fried food and spilled beer. Behind the counter, Anna, barely in her 20s, moved with quiet grace. She was the kind of waitress everyone admired, polite, hard-working, with a smile that could soften even the roughest day. But behind her warm eyes, she carried a heaviness no one could see. Just as the night seemed ordinary, the sound of engines roared outside. Heads turned toward the door as it swung open with force. In walked a gang of bikers, leather jackets glistening under the dim lights, boots heavy against the wooden floor. Their laughter was sharp, their presence commanding. The atmosphere shifted instantly, conversations died down, and regulars lowered their eyes, pretending not to notice. At the center of the group was a man taller than the rest, broad shoulders covered in tattoos, his expression unreadable. He carried himself with the kind of authority that made people instinctively move out of the way. The bar, once alive with chatter, now felt like it was holding its breath. Anna, wiping her hands nervously on her apron, forced herself to stay calm. She had dealt with difficult customers before, but something about these men made her uneasy. Still, she straightened her posture, picked up her notepad, and walked toward their table with the same steady smile she wore for everyone. What she didn't know was that this night would unravel a secret buried in her past, and the man who looked like trouble would become the key to unlocking it. Anna approached the biker's table, her heart steady on the outside but racing on the inside. She could feel every set of eyes in the bar watching her. The leader leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, studying her like she was some kind of test. His friends laughed and made loud jokes, their voices echoing through the silence that had swallowed the room. "Whiskey," he barked, tapping his glass against the table. His tone wasn't a request, it was a command. Anna nodded politely, writing it down though she didn't need to. She poured the drink and set it gently in front of him, forcing her hands not to tremble. But as she turned to walk away, the biker suddenly reached out and grabbed her wrist. The motion was so sharp and unexpected that the entire bar stiffened. "Hold on," he said, his voice lower now, almost taunting. His friends leaned in, waiting for something to happen. Anna's smile faltered, her breath catching. She tried to pull back, but his grip only tightened. Then, in one shocking move, the biker yanked at her shirt, tearing it open down the seam. Gasps filled the air. Someone dropped their glass, and it shattered on the floor. For a split second, everyone believed they were watching a cruel act meant to humiliate her. The bar froze. Anna's face burned red with shock, her hand instinctively clutching at the torn fabric. A silence heavier than smoke spread across the room. Even the jukebox seemed to fall quiet. But as the biker's eyes fell on what he had revealed, something shifted. His mocking grin vanished. His hand fell away. He stared at her chest, not with lust or ridicule, but with a look that stunned even his friends. Something about what he saw had stopped him cold. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The bar hung in silence, every eye fixed on Anna and the towering biker who had just ripped her shirt. But the look on his face wasn't the smug grin everyone expected, it was something else entirely. His hands, rough and calloused, dropped to his sides as if they had just touched fire. There, revealed on Anna's skin, was a small but unmistakable tattoo. An army insignia. Beneath it, a name was carefully inked in fading black, Staff Sergeant David Miller. The biker's jaw tightened. His eyes widened as though he'd just seen a ghost. He stumbled back a step, his chair screeching across the floor. Where did you get that?" His voice was no longer sharp, but broken, unsteady. Anna clutched at her torn shirt, confused by the sudden change in his tone. Her lips trembled before she whispered, "It was my dad's unit. He served in Afghanistan. He didn't come home." Her voice cracked on the last word. The biker blinked hard, his chest heaving as if each breath hurt. "That insignia," he said, pointing with a trembling hand, "that's my brother's unit too." His voice broke completely, and he had to swallow hard before continuing. "He never made it back either." The air inside the bar shifted again. The patrons, who had been bracing for violence, now sat frozen for another reason. The biker who had entered like a storm, loud and full of menace, now stood vulnerable, eyes glistening with tears he tried to hide. Anna's pain and his collided in that instant, a young woman who had lost her father, and a hardened man who had lost his brother. Two strangers, bound together by grief neither of them chose, suddenly saw each other not as enemies, but as family. The biker's friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their laughter long gone. The bar, once thick with tension, now felt strangely fragile, as if one wrong move might shatter the moment completely. Anna's hands shook as she tried to pull her torn shirt together, but before she could, the biker did something no one expected. He shrugged off his heavy leather jacket, the one patched with skulls, flames, and the name of his club, and gently placed it over her shoulders. The gesture was careful, almost protective, as though he were afraid she might break. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low, cracking under the weight of grief. The words didn't sound rehearsed or forced. They sounded real, heavy, and full of regret. "I didn't mean. I didn't know." Anna looked up, her eyes meeting his. For the first time, she didn't see a frightening stranger. She saw a man who carried the same emptiness she had lived with since the day she lost her father. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't just from pain anymore. They were from recognition, from knowing she wasn't alone in her sorrow. The biker cleared his throat, his rough voice trembling as he admitted, "My brother, he was all I had. I never talked about him, not to anyone. But seeing that name, that mark, it's like he's standing in front of me again." Around them, the bar softened. Patrons who had been gripping their drinks now lowered them quietly, their eyes reflecting a respect no one had expected to feel for the intimidating man in leather. A few even nodded, silently acknowledging the invisible wounds both he and Anna carried. What began as a moment of fear was transforming into something rare and powerful, two broken lives finding an unexpected bridge of compassion in the unlikeliest place. The bar was silent, every soul caught in the weight of what had just unfolded. The biker stood tall, his hand still resting lightly on Anna's shoulder, his leather jacket draped over her like a shield. For the first time since he had walked through that door, his voice carried no threat, only raw truth. He picked up his glass of whiskey, lifted it high, and said in a voice that trembled but rang with conviction, "To the ones we lost, and to the ones still standing." The words cut through the air like a prayer. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, one by one, glasses lifted across the room. Old men at the counter, couples at their tables, even the bartender, all raised their drinks. What had begun as a night of fear turned into a quiet circle of unity, as if the whole bar had suddenly become a family bound by shared respect. Anna, wrapped in his jacket, looked around at the faces softened by compassion. Her lips curved into a smile that trembled with both sorrow and hope. She raised her glass of water and whispered, "To my dad, and to your brother." The biker closed his eyes for a moment, holding back the storm within. When he opened them again, there was something new in his gaze, not anger, not pride, but peace. For the first time in years, he wasn't carrying the weight alone. As the glasses clinked and the toast echoed, the bar felt different, lighter, warmer. The man who had entered like a shadow of chaos left that night with something unexpected, a connection that healed a piece of his broken soul. And Anna, she realized that sometimes, even in the most unlikely moments, kindness and shared pain could turn strangers into family.